Hola, amigo. Bienvenido al hemisférico sur. I've been here in Quito for 3 days now. Well, this is my third day. The first 2 days I spent walking around trying to get used to the altitude. I was warned that it would be difficult the first day or so. And of course I didn't believe it, but it's actually true. We're at an altitude of 2,850 meters here in Quito, so the air is a little bit thinner. It's a little bit harder to breathe for someone who spent most of his time in the last couple of months much closer to sea level. Carbondale, for example, is at 320 meters. So it's a big difference. The first 2 days I was here, I was out walking around and I couldn't believe how difficult it was to actually walk at a normal pace. I tried to make this video on my first day and all I ended up doing is panting the whole way. I was breathless. And even today, I'm still a little bit breathless. But I wanted to do this video just to give you an update on what it was like on my arrival and some quirky little facts about Quito itself. I'm in La Carolina Park. It's sort of in downtown Quito, but the reason I'm here is because it's right next to my Airbnb. And I just like to come over here. I've been here for the last 2 days in a row. And I just like to come over and walk around. It's a nice quiet place mostly. It's a huge park, as you can see from this Google Earth image here. And I'll show you some of the scenery surrounding the park on my walk. I'm sure you've heard a lot of times that the higher up you go, the air gets thinner. And at first I didn't believe that, or people would tell me that there's less oxygen or something like that. And I knew there was not less oxygen. I mean, air is air. So if you have 21% oxygen at sea level, no matter how high you go, you still have 21% oxygen. So when I started to really think about that, I was wondering, well, what is it that causes people to lose their breath at higher altitudes? And after some intense Google research, I realized that when people say the air is thinner, that's actually the absolute best definition of what's going on. Because the higher you go, the less pressure there is on the air, and the air molecules, whether they're nitrogen, oxygen, or whatever, are not as close together. They're much closer together at sea level than they are at altitude. So when people say the air is thin at altitude, they're right. They may not know why they're right, but they're right. I'm sure you've also noticed that I'm wearing my jacket because it's actually cool here. And you're wondering why it's cool on the equator. Well, it's because we're high up. Kuala Lumpur is very close to the equator. It's a few degrees north, but it's almost at sea level. So it never really gets cool there because of altitude. In fact, I think the average temperature there is between 25 and 30. Here, the average temperature, I think, well, I don't know what the average temperature is. If you're interested in that, you can look it up. Right now, it's 12 degrees. It will get warmer. In fact, I brought my sweat towel along because I will need it. And the jacket will be removed. But starting around 8 o'clock in the morning when I leave the house, it's chilly, so I always wear the coat. I also bought a hat, for those of you wondering about my hat. I mentioned once before I was going to have to buy a hat other than the watch cap that I have, because the sun here is very strong at 2,800 meters. It's a Wednesday morning, and for a school day there seems to be an awful lot of activity here. Many of the fields and the football fields and basketball courts are occupied. And lots of people walking. There's even an outdoor gym. There were a lot of people working out. And there are even two people fencing in the outdoor gym. For my Down Valley viewers, that means sword fighting. Yeah, the jacket came off, and look at this. The sweat towel is back. It's April 2023. The sweat towel is back. My oxygen uptake system is not functioning at its peak efficiency like it normally does in Carbondale, Pennsylvania. Also, I'm rambling. The first video I tried to make on Monday, I looked at the clips and I realized I was just rambling on and on. I didn't even understand what I was talking about. And as I think about what I've said so far today, today's not that much better. So if I seem like I'm rambling or incoherent, write it off to the altitude. I'm certainly glad that I'm not in charge of cutting the grass here, because there is a lot of it. And it looks like it could use a trim. I would guess that they probably cut grass in Quito year-round. Because the way the temperature is right now, I think pretty much this is the way it is all year. It's cool, but it never really gets cold. And never really gets hot either. I mean, there are extremes, but not extreme in the sense that I would think of them as extreme. All right, here it is. I bought this hat from a seller on the street yesterday, or Monday, 2 days ago. I was walking down the street in the sun without a hat, and she scolded me. At least I think she scolded me. Either that or she was trying to sell me her car. But she ended up selling me a hat. I'm wearing SPF 30 right now, which at this altitude is not really effective. I have SPF 50 back at my house, but for some reason I didn't put it on today. Anyway, the hat's necessary anyhow, so I decided to buy the hat and wear it. Because if I go by that lady again, I don't want her to scold me. Right now I'm coming out of the park and I'm going to be on one of the streets. The park is right in the middle of town and it's surrounded on 4 or 5 sides by, 3, 4, 5 lane roads. Well, I crossed one too many streets. I was trying to get to my favorite coffee shop and get a latte, but I just kept walking. I wasn't really paying attention. Do my regular viewers remember what my favorite coffee shop is? McDonald's coffee, possibly the best on earth. Anyway, I'm going to go in and see if I can get one. Yeah, I think I mentioned before in a video, I think it was in Budapest, that I think McDonald's coffee has the best coffee, maybe not in the world, but it's really good. I enjoy it. Another interesting thing I noticed due to the altitude here in Quito is that coffee never gets as hot as it does at sea level because water boils at 90 degrees Celsius. Normally, of course, you recall that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. And this brought up an interesting story that I recall from the days when I first moved to Malaysia in 1987, or 1982, I guess it was. A group of friends and I were climbing Mount Kinabalu, which has a total height of 4,100 meters. But we spent the night at 3,200 meters. And while we were cooking dinner, the usual ramen noodles and things, I noticed that the noodles took an awfully long time to get soft. The water was boiling away, but the noodles took a long time to get soft. And I was wondering why, and one of my friends said it's because we're at altitude. The water boils at a lower temperature. And to demonstrate this, she stuck her finger in the boiling water. And it didn't burn her. Now, I tried it also, and it was hot. It was really hot. But it wasn't one of those things where you stick your finger in and immediately had to pull it out. It wasn't that hot. Now, normally if you stick your finger in boiling water, it's going to hurt. But I looked it up yesterday to find out what this was so I could tell this story. Water at 3,200 meters boils at 89 degrees Celsius. Water here in Quito at 2,800 degrees boils at 90 degrees Celsius. So when you get a hot coffee at McDonald's, you don't have to let it sit and cool off for as long as normal. That's my point. Another quirky thing, I sort of knew this before I got here, is that Ecuador uses the US dollar as its currency. So when I pay for things, if I have to use actual cash, I can use US dollars if I have any. And they also have dollar coins. When I paid for my very first meal here, I got change in both US dollars and in $1 coins. As you know from another earlier video though, I try to pay for everything with a card so I can get travel points. But when that's not possible, the US dollar works here. It doesn't work here, it's actually the currency. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap this up with a recap of my travel. It all occurred in one day. I left Wilkes-Barre, Scranton at 6 a.m. and arrived in Quito, Ecuador at 11:30 p.m. For some reason, I could not find any flights that arrived like during the day, like a normal time. So because it was so late, I decided to stay at a hotel at the airport and then move into the Airbnb the following day. So that worked out pretty good. But I must say that Quito is a mountainous city. There were ups, downs, and curves all the way into town. Where I am right now is fairly flat, but getting here from the airport was not flat at all. So I left Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, made a connection in Newark, another connection in Houston, and then finally flew from Houston to Quito. All of it was on United Airlines. Many of you know that I'm an airline agnostic, but if I had to say which my favorite airline was, it would be Delta. But on this particular trip, United did a wonderful job. And this is a big one. They're the only airline that I've ever seen that actually uses their boarding process. Everybody else has one, but they don't bother using it. United had what I think is a sensible process, plus they stuck to it. They made people board when they were supposed to. So kudos to United for that. There's probably going to be more in the next video about my trip. But right now, I think that's going to be it for today. So I'll wrap it up and say thanks for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, now is a good time to do it. Adios, amigo. Did you catch that Spanish lingo there?
Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe by clicking my face over there on the left. That's it for today. I'll show myself out.